Hi, I'm Dan Morzeka. I'm here at Eastie, and today we're going to go over the HMI controls and machine control on the HMI for the ECB25. So we'll start out today with the basic user operation and screen. The basic user has no password, and here we're looking at a 10-inch C80 high-resolution HMI and PLC from B&R. On the top, you'll be able to notice you are the basic user. Here are live inputs from the tunnel temperature and the seal bar temperature that are displayed there. Their set points from the recipe are shown here. As a basic user, you're expected to just be operating the machine, and in those cases, you'll be able to see specific notes about how to orient the product or any extra instructions for running the product. Here is a live count of packages per minute, which will update after every 4 packages to give you an accurate projected packages per minute count, and this is your packages counter. To reset your packages counter for the day, simply press reset. On the bottom left side of the live machine monitoring, you'll see 2 sensor indicators. There's the in-feed start sensor, and then there's the in-feed end sensor. Both of those sensors will go green when there is product present and ready in front of those sensors. So for manual control for the basic user, you can manually control different areas of the machine. To enable that control, you need to turn manual mode on. Once manual mode is on, you now have 5 different options to move the different parts of the machine. There's a button for the in-feed conveyor, the seal bar heater to turn that on, head cycling the seal head, turning the tunnel on, and returning all the actuators to home. The speed at which all these operate here and the set points that they are set to are preset in the recipe. The basic user does not have the ability to change any recipe values. Everything is already preset. Across the left-hand side of the screen, in the navigation pane, there is a home tab and there is an alarm tab. The alarm tab is where all the alarms will be shown and any messages to the user during operation. To start warming up the machine, the user can press to turn the tunnel on, turn the seal bar heater on. When both heaters are turned on and heating up to their set points, there will be a message displayed in the center of the screen that indicates that heating is in progress. When the set points are reached, the message will change and update to green, indicating you are ready to start the machine. You are unable to start the machine if you are still in manual mode. For example, if you push manual mode, if you push machine start, there'll be an alarm that pops up. You can navigate to the alarm screen by pushing the yellow triangle here or by pushing the flashing indicator there. On the alarm screen, it indicates that manual mode must be shut off before running the machine. You can acknowledge the alarm, navigate back to the home screen, and then wait until the seal bar and heater are up to temperature. Now that both the tunnel and seal bar are within the range of their set points, we are ready to start running the machine. To do that, basic user can push machine start. This will start the main process and home the actuators to their predefined recipe locations. At that point, you are ready to start loading product onto the in-feed conveyor. When you're done running the process, you can push machine stop. This will stop the main process that is running. It will not shut off the heaters. The heaters will remain running until you go into machine cooldown. After pushing machine cooldown, the tunnel will go into its cooldown procedure. The procedure will run with the fan at a predefined recipe value until the tunnel drops below 150 degrees, and then this timer for 5 minutes will start. After that, everything will shut down. At any point during machine operation, the basic user is free to use the emergency stop button. Once the emergency stop is pressed, this will stop all processes on the machine and all conveyors. The alarm will blare until the user resets the emergency stop. To reset the emergency stop, twist the knob and push the reset button one time. The user can then go to the alarm screen and see on screen an alarm that indicates that the emergency stop has been reset. You can acknowledge the alarm. Before the conveyor is allowed to move, the basic user must acknowledge that the tunnel conveyor is going to move so the tunnel can go into cooldown. Navigating back to the home screen, you can see the tunnel is now in its cooldown process, where the blower will run and the conveyor will run until we are below that 150-degree set point for 5 minutes. At any point in time when the machine is operating as the basic user and a door is opened, again, it will stop all processes, the alarm will blare, the user can go to the alarm screen to see what the problem is, and it indicates that the front door on the machine is open. There are 5 doors on the machine, and the alarms will tell you exactly which door is open. To reset the alarm, close the door, and then push acknowledge. The user will then have to acknowledge that the conveyor will begin moving for cooldown, and then you can go back to the home screen to wait for cooldown to finish. For all machine changeover to different recipes or new recipe creation, you'll have to log in as the maintenance user to gain access to those more sensitive screens. To do that, push the icon at the top. Username is maintenance. Password is package right. Once logged in as the maintenance user, there are a few new icons on the screen that you'll have access to. On the top, it shows the recipe icon. That is where you go to load and save new recipes or create new ones. Tap the icon. Here's a list of up to 50 different recipes that you can create. To select within the list, you can first tap and then scroll up and down. To load a recipe, select a recipe that you would like to load and then press load. To create a new recipe, input a new recipe name here and then push new recipe. To delete a recipe, select the recipe and then push delete. Here's an example of loading the recipe. We'll load the default recipe. After loading the recipe, there is a pop-up to remind you that new physical things need to get changed over on the machine, such as the pusher head, dead plate, new film, and the guards need to be adjusted. Simply loading the new recipe will not always be appropriate when changing over between different products. Along the left-hand side, there are 3 new icons that are present. There is the Recipe tab, there's the Setup tab, and there is the Diagnostics tab. So the Recipe tab, this is all the recipe information available to run this product. The recipe information is broken out between the infeed, unwind, the sealer, and tunnel. These are the 4 main sections of the machine, and each tab has its own settings related to that section. So I'll select the unwind, and then the sealer, and then the tunnel. You'll notice across the top, there are extra tabs for the administrator and plant manager. These tabs are only viewable if your current user is the plant manager or administrator. Starting in the infeed section for the maintenance recipe, you can enter things such as how many product rows the package has, how many products per row, all the pusher settings relating to distances, velocities, and accelerations of the pusher, as well as the infeed conveyor speed down here. On the right-hand side, you'll notice there's 3 text boxes there with a little ruler icon next to it. That is a guide to the user. If there's a ruler icon next to it, this value is going to correspond to a physical ruler guide on the machine somewhere. The text boxes that do not have a ruler guide next to it, that indicates that that value will change the speed, acceleration, or timing of the software itself. On screen here, there are 3 additional toggles. These toggles, and specifically here, will enable or disable the product clamp, the compression relief, or the in-feed conveyor stopping before pushing. These become active when you are running the machine. It'll run it in different modes of operation. The bottom section is all grouped for that product start sensor. This product start sensor is 2 purposes. Its first purpose is to identify when there is a product present underneath the sensor for the set duration of 1/4 of a second. Its other purpose is to detect a down bottle going by in order to stop the machine. Currently, down product detection is enabled. By selecting this button here, it will disable that option. The product height bad is the analog feedback from that sensor from positioning the bottle when it was laying down. You can see this in the setup video. The next section that we'll go into will be the unwind section. The unwind is everything related to the stepper drives for the film unwind for both the top and the bottom. You can see all of these values here have the ruler icon, which dictates that it correlates to a specific ruler on the machine. In this case, film width is replacing the actual film. And this is the film thickness and the film type. On the top left, there's the upper unwind speed and the lower unwind speed. To change the speed of the unwinds, tap to open the box. The limits are already set in the box. You can either scroll to change the limit or type in a new value. Whenever a recipe value changes, you will be prompted to save your changes. To save, simply push save. Moving on to the sealer area. These are all the recipe values specific to the seal bar. So there is extending speeds, retraction speeds, actual temperature of the seal bar itself, the acceleration and deceleration. The seal duration is the amount of time that the seal bar is down creating that seal. For thicker films, you'll increase that value. For thinner films, you can decrease it. The seal bar extend distance is the distance that the seal bar extends from its home position down to the seal pad. Over here we have the guide assembly height. There are 2 pneumatic actuators inside the sealer section, the product hold down and the product guide. Again, to enable or disable the operation of these actuators for the recipe, it is a simple toggle button. For most products, these both will always be enabled. Moving on to the tunnel section for recipes. In the tunnel section, there are 2 positions for the guides in the back. Then there is the tunnel conveyor speed, the blower speed, and the tunnel temperature. Next, we'll go and explore the Setup tab. On the Setup tab, there are 4 unique tabs across the top. There's a tab for the in-feed, there's a tab for the sealer, and then there's 2 physical setup tabs. Starting out with the physical setup tab 2. The physical setup will indicate those ruler guides somewhere on the machine, along with a picture that shows where those guides are. Physical setup 2 correlates to the rear guide next to the tunnel, the 2 arms, and then the guide assembly height. These recipe values are the same values that are shown in the recipe, and here they are shown next to a picture for user reference. Navigating to Physical Setup 1, Physical Setup 1 shows both the in-feed and the unwind, and their correlating recipe values. Going to the sealer setup. On the sealer setup page, there are a few buttons that are grayed out that you are not allowed to use until you enable manual mode. To turn on manual mode, in the footer, there's a toggle button for manual mode. Enabling that button allows you access to these other toggle buttons. The top 2 toggle buttons are manual control of the 2 pneumatic actuators in the sealer area, the product guide and the product hold down. To actuate the product guide, simply press the button. After the actuation is complete and there is positive feedback from the sensor, the text will update to indicate that you can now actuate it in the opposite direction. The same is for product hold-down actuator. The next section to look at is going to be the manual seal bar control. This is where you can command the seal bar to move to any position along its stroke. And you don't have to worry, all the manual control that you have in the GUI here is all protected by itself. If the user tries to do something that could cause a collision between the different actuators, the software will protect you. For example, if we try to move to the test value of 0 right now, there's an alarm that occurs. To go to that alarm, either select it on the left-hand side or the icon on the top. Here, the alarm is saying the product guide must be extended out of the seal bar area. You can either acknowledge the alarm with the button on the bottom or the green checks at the top. And we'll navigate back to the setup page. So the product guide, we're going to extend that out of the seal bar area, and now we're free to move the servo. The seal bar current position is shown right above the user input. So currently it has its 0 position. Change it back to 5, and the seal bar moved to 5. Down at the bottom and on the side, these are correlating to the exact same recipe values that are shown in the recipe tab. Here they are duplicated for user reference. Moving on from the recipe values, there is the button here that says Find Seal Bar Home. This button is used after changing the seal bar assembly height, G1, as shown here. This assembly height sets the entire height of the guides, the hold down, and the seal bar retraction point. By lowering this down, the product hold down will make positive contact with the top of the product, and it will also reduce the length that the seal bar retracts, which will greatly increase the speed at which you are able to run products. On the guide itself, there is an inductive proximity sensor mounted there. When the user presses Find Seal Bar Home, the seal bar will go and travel to find that inductive proximity height and save that new home position in its recipe. If the seal bar fails to find its home position, it will trigger an alarm that will pop up. In this case, it did succeed in finding that inductive proximity sensor. The last button on the page is to turn the setup enabled on. By pressing this button, it will launch a pop-up. The pop-up that is launched after you press setup mode, you will confirm that you are a qualified person about to perform maintenance on this machine. When entering setup mode, there are several features that are now grayed out for your protection. There is no more manual mode control of the servos. You cannot turn the conveyors on. You cannot change the status of the heaters. All you are able to do is move the pneumatic actuators, change recipe values, and form a slow head cycle. Setup mode allows you to do these actuations with the doors open and not trigger an alarm. To exit setup mode, tap the button, confirm you're exiting, and those other features and movements are now re-enabled. Moving across the top from the sealer setup to the infeed setup, the top left shows actuation of 3 infeed actuators. These are manual control for the clamp, which can be extended, retracted, the compression relief, extended, retracted, the product dam, retracting, extending, and the pusher servo. The pusher servo control is identical to the sealer servo control. Here, it indicates what the pusher's current position is. You can then enter in a value and have it move to the new position. Again, the user does not have to worry about causing any unwanted collisions with the actuators, as the software protects against any possible collisions. In this case, it is ensuring the compression relief is retracted out of the way. You can acknowledge the alarm, retract the compression relief, and try and perform the move, and the move succeeded. Again, down at the bottom, these are recipe values that correlate to the recipe tab, placed here for user accessibility. On the in-feed setup page, you'll find that same setup icon, which will allow you to go into setup mode. When going into setup mode, you can see that the servo control is now disabled. You're only allowed to move the actuators and perform a slow head cycle. To exit setup mode, press the setup mode exit. One additional button located on this page is the button to teach the product present end. You will only ever need to do this if swapping out your product present end sensor with a new sensor. To do so, you will push the button and then follow the on-screen prompts. Today we'll cancel out of that. The next tab in the navigation to drop down into is the Diagnostics tab. The first information screen that is shown in the Diagnostics tab shows specific information about your machine: the model number, serial number, PLC, and the date. The next tab is the System tab. On the System tab, you can see lifetime metrics of your machine's operations. There are items such as run times, actuation counts for cycles, and inches moved for the servos. The user is also able to adjust the brightness. The user is also able to change their password. The Help tab will have individual sections and links for individual setup of each part of the machine. There will be a Help Document tab, which will load a user guide for the machine. This will be a PDF, which you can full screen and then minimize. There will also be a screen with QR codes. The tab SDM will launch the built-in B&R Systems Diagnostic Manager. This is for advanced debugging. And you can look up B&R user guide on how to use this. File Viewer is the option built in where the user can insert a USB drive into the inside of the HMI image enclosure. In that USB drive, you can then port off your specific recipes that you save in order to copy them to another machine. On this file viewer device, there's also a history of alarms on there that you're able to save off onto a USB. The last tab to go into is the I/O view. Here, the I/Os are all shown for the different sections of the machine. This will be a very powerful screen that shows the live status of what the actual physical I/O is, what the application is, and what the state is if it is highlighted or not. No forcing values are available for any users, only the status values. Shown on screen is a live plot of the in-feed start distance. Also shown is the in-feed start distance here, 2.7. This is just for reference only. As you're on the screen, the plot will update. When you leave the screen, the plot will stop. Next, we'll move into the unwind. Here are shown the inputs that are for the unwind. There's the dancer bar inputs, which are both true, and then the low film indicators, which are both false currently. Moving on to the sealer. Here at the sealer, you see all of the inputs for all the input sensors, all of the outputs for everything that is commanded to be on, such as the seal bar heater to extend the product guide. This step in the graph is what I was explaining earlier, where the graphs do not update unless you are on the page. So here it is plotting a live temperature of what the temperature is right now. So it is cooling down. Similarly with the tunnel, there are just two outputs on the tunnel, and then the input of the temperature and the temperature graph. Torque plots shows both the torques of both the servos that are on this machine. One for the pusher, one for the seal bar. Those values are plotted live. So if I do a head cycle, here's the torque curve for the seal head. The maximum torque value for both the pushers is about 3.9 newtons. At that point, there'll be an error that occurs on screen, and you'll be able to see that in the alarm. Where it spikes up for that short duration, that is the seal time represented in the torque curve. Here are the external IOs, which are terminal blocks available inside the enclosure that give you a 24-volt signal that is either in or out. When these lights are illuminated, that indicates that there is 24 volts present on that terminal block. This is for the end user to be able to connect upstream or downstream machines for information. Likewise, there is an input on one of the terminal blocks that will power off the machine and cause it to go into cooldown mode. Next, we can explore the plant manager settings. To do so, change your username to plant manager. Log in. Plant Manager is going to have additional recipe settings. Recipe tab. You can now see that the Plant Manager tab is no longer disabled. Similar to the Maintenance tab, the Plant Manager settings are organized by the different sections of the machine. So these are recipe values that the Plant Manager can edit that are very rarely needed to be changed, but available if needed. Different timings, short push distance, debounce times, and accelerations of conveyors. For the unwind, we have photo eye debounce time for low film, and we have the option for the machine to stop processing the machine when those low film indicators are low. So with this enabled, when the film is low, it will stop running the process on the machine. To disable that option, toggle it, and then push save. By enabling this option, the user is able to splice in the film at the unwinds, which is much easier than crawling under the machine to splice the top and the bottom together. Next, we'll go to the Sealer tab. There are no additional Plant Manager settings on the sealer at this time. Under the Tunnel tab, here we only have the acceleration and deceleration for the tunnel conveyor, which again rarely ever needs to be adjusted. Going to the Setup tab, there are no new buttons available for the Plant Manager on the Setup tab. There are no additional settings available to the Plant Manager anywhere else than other what is shown just in the Recipe tab. After logging in as the Administrator tab in the Recipe section is now available. The Administrator tab allows you to set the debounce time for the critical safety photo eyes, to reduce the torque limits for both the seal bar and the pusher. It allows you to reset all your recipe timers to defaults. It also allows you to erase all recipes on the HMI. Navigating over to the Setup tab, going to the InFeed, there is an additional button on screen to commission the pusher. By pushing this button, it will launch a pop-up, at which point it will confirm with you that it will move the actuators out of the way to recommission the pusher. Commissioning of the pusher should only be done under ECB guidance upon changing out pusher actuator. So today we're going to cancel out of that. Similarly, we'll go to the sealer setup. Again, you'll see a button that's new here showing commissioning of the seal bar. Pushing that button will launch a pop-up notifying the user that different guides will automatically be moved out of the way, and the seal bar commissioning will commence. Do not commission the seal bar unless you are under the guidance of an ECB personnel, as this only needs to be done when the seal bar servo is being replaced. So we're going to cancel out. There's also a button on here to commission the seal bar heater. By pushing this button, it will launch a pop-up, and by confirming this pop-up, you will go through a 15-minute process at which the tuning of the seal bar control will commence. Commissioning of the seal bar heater is only needed if, after changing out the seal bar fire rod, the heating speed is not satisfactory. So today, we will cancel out of this process. There's also a button for commissioning the tunnel heater. By confirming at this stage, the tunnel will go through a 30-minute process to recommission the tunnel heater. This is only needed if, after replacing the heater bank, the tunnel heating timing is not satisfactory. Otherwise, the default temperature profile is sufficient. So today we're going to cancel out of this process. Going to the Diagnostics and then to the System tab. The administrator is not able to change the administrator's password. That password is fixed and forever. What the administrator is able to do is it's able to enter in either the maintenance or the plant manager username and change that personnel's password if ever it is forgotten. This concludes our ECB25 HMI screens video. I hope you enjoyed that. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please check out our YouTube or our website at ecb.com. Thanks for watching.